Hello! Thank you for joining me tonight. Beautiful night here in Pennsylvania, rural Pennsylvania, so glad you could be along. Let me make sure my microphone's working. Thank you so much for everyone that's here. I really appreciate it. So, yeah, remember, schedule's going to be 10:30. If there's a change because of work, I'll let you know. But as of right now, it'll be 10:30 Sunday nights, Monday nights, Tuesday nights, Wednesday nights will be my live stream. So tune in every night at 10:30 for the live streams. You won't hear YouTube's recommend that because they're terrible and they censor us. So the theme for today, I originally was going to talk about COVID and how the sort of riots and the protest, how that applied to this. So, but I'm going to change and maybe I'll do that later in the week. And that's kind of a simplistic story, but to me, it's a story that shows why you should be distrusting of the establishment every time they tell you anything. But things have came up, and I think that there's something more pressing to talk about. It is becoming a very unpopular job to do what I do. To be someone who's conservative leaning and wants to have comments in public, whether it be through platforms like DLive, YouTube, Twitch, Periscope, Facebook, because I'm a content creator, whether it be because you're just someone who likes to post things on Facebook or you like to post things on Twitter. It's becoming difficult. The institutions that control this country, both our elected institutions in Congress or our institutions that control our culture, such as academia, the entertainment industry, Silicon Valley, the mainstream media, they're setting it up so to disagree with anything what they say or of any of the extreme leftist positions that you see makes you a racist and you're a terrible person. And they're winning. They're extremely winning. They're winning so much that I personally have friends that no longer want to talk to me because they think I'm a racist because I disagree with the political aims of Black Lives Matter. Ironically, I think that the goals of Black Lives Matter will literally immediately lead to the deaths of tens of thousands of black people. But somehow I'm a racist for disagreeing with their... and it will destroy the country in general. All of these things are geared to... you could lose your job. I've had threats on my job. You could have people physically threaten you. You could have people dox you. You could have people go after your family. You have family members that don't want to talk to you in many cases. All of this for just speaking the truth. And so it becomes difficult and it wears on you. And it wears on me, it does. But I say this all the time. It might seem like I'm freaking out on channel a lot. I'm yelling and things like that. That's just my internal monologue. What you hear is what I sound like to me in my head. You can see when I talk with other people, I'm not as loud. I'm more understanding. Even people that extremely disagree with me. You can check out my debates, which I'll be doing more of to see that. But, yeah, well, me too, Phil. I also have a bleak outlook for the country. But it's hard. We talk about the concept of privilege. I'm in a unique position. And the reason is, the number one example of privilege I have is that my family and my loved ones are the greatest in the history of the world. My wife is the greatest wife ever. My parents were the greatest. My in-laws are the greatest. My close friends are the greatest. And so I know they know who I am and they support me. And so I'm able to come on here and do this and still have the people closest to me support me, even if they disagree with me, because they know where my heart is. That's not true for a lot of people, and it becomes difficult. Or even if it is true, sometimes it still becomes too much. And so it's hard to find people that have these voices. So, which way do I want to go with this? So, I'm fortunate that I met some great people on my channel. The first person who ever helped me with the live stream, who didn't know me from anything, was my friend Drone Tech, who has a channel that I recommend checking out on YouTube. Be the easiest place to find him. Drone Tech sees me struggling with this live stream, talks me through it. Literally, he was the only person who watched my first live stream, and he just helped me out technically while I rambled on about politics. SJG Perspective, Rational Wrong Think, that I've met through sort of that crew. And then I was introduced to American Joe and Doug Ducote, who brought me on for this 48-hour special they were doing. And then I started doing the Patriot panel with them. I met people like Sarah Courier. I met people like the Patriot Hour, Mike from the Patriot Hour. I've met Tons of people, and if I'm not citing you, please don't take that. Let's Be Frank, I did his show the other day. All of those people that were great. We don't agree on everything, and we definitely have different styles, but I met a lot of great patriots, and they helped me grow my channel, even though it's modest. Oh, look at this. I'm screwing up. Hopefully the audio is working. It looks like I'm going to lag. By the way, I'm getting a new computer, so this lag stuff come next month will hopefully be ending. But I would really appreciate any financial donations you could send me, because my wife's going to kill me for spending money on a computer. But I digress. Anyways, I met a lot of great people, and I really thank all of them. And it's tough to do what we do. I talk to people behind the scenes, and it's hard. You got the tech companies censoring you. You got your stuff, some people, this is their career. They get demonetized for no reasons. There was an incident the other day where someone was doing a prayer group that YouTube shut down in the middle of that prayer group because they said that prayer group violated terms and services. It's tough to put so much energy in something when the deck's stacked against you so much. And so I am really appreciative of all those people that have supported me. The reason I bring this up is that the person who first, I believe, is most responsible, I don't know first, but was most responsible for coming up with this idea of trying to bring conservative-minded people together to do videos together was American Joe. He was the one, it was his channel that we all came to. We did the Patriot panel there. He was the person who was in charge with facilitating, kind of getting everyone on board for the show every week. I mean, we did it for what? A good 15, 16 weeks running. He had sent people to subscribe to my channel. I mean, when I started off, I think when I first met American Joe, I think I had 250 subscribers. Now I'm up to 2,000 on YouTube. Still not a huge channel, but still, a lot of that was fans of Joe's that came over to my channel because he asked them to give me a listen. Unfortunately, Joe did his last show this evening. And you could watch his show. He's going to leave it up for a week, he said, to get in his own words. I'm not going to speak as to too much as to why that happened. I'll leave his own words speak for himself. But what I can say is this: it becomes taxing on you to talk about depressing stuff all the time, to have the deck completely stacked against you, to mire through the corruption we see, to have people make personal threats to you, to dox you, to have channels dedicated to hating you. All of that stuff happens to a lot of people that do what we do. And so it's hard to keep these voices going. And I think, for two reasons, that these voices are the most important right now. Because one, we have a vacuum of conservative leadership where they are silent. They're absolutely silent. We have no one with political power that is backing us anymore. None. They're cowards. They're afraid to be called racist. They're willing to let our country burn as long as that means they could get their cushy election seat. Excuse me, next time. And so people like Joe or myself, Drone Tech, SJG, Let's Be Frank, Patriot Hour, Doug Ducote, whatever. And I'm not saying you're going to like each and every person. And look, you might not like their message. You might not like their style. You just might not like them personally. I know people that love some of the people that I work with that can't stand me. That's fine. But there are at least people out there putting their perspective out there. And that perspective right now is definitely not endorsed by the mainstream. It's hard to put yourself out there anyways. So I respect the people that do that, and I think we'll sorely miss Joe as a voice that I think was necessary and had an audience where he was saying things to people and inspiring people and giving people information that we sorely need. And so it's sad to see someone go. But never forget this. No matter what you're doing out there, no matter me doing a channel, yourself, your well-being, your family's well-being, your loved one's well-being, that's the most important thing. So if I get to the point where my channel feels that it's no longer fun, or if it's impeding my personal relationships in my life, I would end the channel. I will never stop saying what I think's the truth, ever. I will be buried before I bow down or take a knee to this mob. But the channel's a different thing. If the channel becomes something that's no longer fun for me and it feels like work, I work 80, 90 hours a week. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, if you didn't know that, check out, Joe said he's only going to leave his stuff up for a week. So check out some of American Joe's stuff because you may not be able to find it. after this week. Check out his last video where he kind of thanks everyone who listened to him. It's worth checking out. And I think Joe will be sorely missed. I wish him the best. So if you're a fan of Joe's and you didn't see that, it might be worth checking out. But the other thing I'm going to ask you to do is please, 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 please support independent content creators. If you could do so financially, that's great. If you can't, that's great too. Just support them by watching or sharing their videos. Even if you don't agree with me, even if you're on the left, and I have people that watch that are on the left, support left-wing independent content creators. I think, I'm biased obviously, but I think it's so hard to be on the right now. To be a conservative right now. It's so hard. You're censored, you're lambasted, everyone in a position of power thinks you're a horrible person. People with the vitriol of some of the people that watch you and the things they say to you and how they try to cost you your career, or they try to drive a wedge into your family, or they say terrible things or try to dox you. It's tough. But it's not easy probably on the left either to put yourself out there. So please support independent content creators. It's very important. It's more important now. In times when we all have to speak the lie, when we can no longer tell the truth, when truth-telling becomes something that our public institutions demand revenge for you telling the truth, demand that you be fired, that's when it's most important to tell the truth. Anyone can tell the truth when there's no consequences. But when you put yourself on the line, where you know that you could be physically affected or emotionally affected by telling the truth, by people in positions of power or loved ones or others that will attack you for that, that's when it's most important to speak up. So that's why I'm encouraging you to support independent content creators. So in that vein, I don't know if I have any mods here. A lot of my mods are Joe's mods, and they're probably having a rough night tonight. But I'll try to put the links up later. You could always super chat me on YouTube. You could, if you're on D Live, you could donate lemons to me there. I'll put my Patreon and PayPal up if you want to support me. My goal is trying to raise $1,200. That's how much the laptop I bought that hopefully will allow me to do these sorts of videos without lagging is going to be. But I'm really trying to reach that goal here in the next few months of $1,200, which for me will be a big feat because I don't get much money. American Joe is who I was talking about, Free Thought. So now, the other part of this video, the longer part, the more angry part. Why are people like me necessary? Well, because I'm so handsome. That must be it. With my Legends of the Hidden Temple shirt. Because we have no leadership. None. Trump's trying. Let me get this out of the way first. There are reports that Trump's going to sign an executive order reforming some police procedures tomorrow. I'm going to take this with a huge grain of salt because I know the media lies and it's almost impossible to trust them. But I've read conflicting reports, and one of the reports suggests that Trump will admit in his executive order that there is systemic racism with law enforcement in this country. I'm hoping Trump doesn't do that. If Trump does that, I will not be voting for Trump in 2020. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Is Biden worse? Yeah, I'm not going to vote for Biden either. I did a 2-minute video the other day, like a couple weeks ago, that said our country cannot survive leaders that hate this country. If the President of the United States stands up and says that law enforcement in this country is systemically racist at this point, where the morale of police is at an all-time low, where you can't even say anything as an average American without being thoroughly attacked like that, I have no reason to support him. None. This is the issue right now. Is this an evil country or not? If you stand up and say, yes, Trump, I'm out. I'm out. I don't care that it's part of some 4D chess plan. I don't care that it's necessary for him to get reelected. None of that will matter to me. None of it. Now, I've also had reports that that's not what it says. So I'm hoping that's the case. And I definitely think that Trump has to say something and he has to do something. We'll see what the order says before I pass judgment. I'm just telling you, if that's how it comes out, that'll be my feeling on it. So I would say the chances of that are low. I'm hoping. So you won't have to worry about it. But we'll see. But Trump's the only person in politics, well, not the only, one of maybe 2 or 3 in the Republican Party that's actually so far kind of fought back against this narrative. What's the narrative I'm talking about? Do Black Lives Matter? Yes, absolutely. All lives matter, including Black lives. Is it okay for Black people to talk specifically about their lives matter? Yes, I don't have a problem with that. I talk about my community a lot. I don't base it on race, but I think that people that live in rural areas don't have a voice anymore, and I speak up for them, regardless of their skin color. I think dividing based on race is dumb, but hey, maybe they think me dividing based on geographic location is stupid. So I don't begrudge people sticking up for their perceived groups. That's fine. I think that it's detrimental to their cause. But nonetheless, I don't mind them saying Black Lives Matter. It's absurd for them to say that all lives matter is racist or something like that. And I also think that if you cared about Black lives, instead of focusing on the 15 unarmed blacks that were killed last year by police, you'd be focusing on the 7,000 that were murdered by other black men. But yes, Black Lives Matter. Are fascists bad? Yes. Would that make me an anti-fascist? Yes, it would. Do I support Antifa? No, I don't. Because their name is a clever marketing ploy. It doesn't just mean, oh, if you're against fascism, then you're in Antifa. That's not what it means. The same is true of Black Lives Matter. It is a political and cultural movement. It doesn't just mean Black Lives Matter. Everyone can agree that Black Lives Matter. But it means ending capitalism. It means ending the police. It means reparations. It means further dividing us based on race. Affirmative action policies. Oh, yeah, okay. Can I do that here? How are you not a mod, Rational? That seems weird. Give me a second. That's what I'm against. I'm not against the concept of Black Lives Matter. In fact, I believe the political motivations of the organization of Black Lives Matter will make life worse, not only for everyone in America, but particularly the people that will suffer the most are inner city black communities. I'm not against. Okay. There you go. Okay. All right. I made Rational a mod. That's... the Supreme Court. Don't even get me started. We don't have leaders in there, so clearly the Democrats are going to be for that. Right? Clearly. They align. They're globalists. They're establishment globalists. They like the communist crap. Of course, they're going to agree. They're fascists themselves. They want complete government control over your lives. They hate you if you're conservative and don't agree with them. So they fit right in with the motivations of Black Lives Matter. Of course, you could expect Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and the rest of that crowd, AOC, Ilhan Omar. Of course, they're going to be right in line with that. Of course, Joe Biden. Yep. Where are the Republicans? Where are they? It makes me want to scream. I won't. We don't have a position of leadership. Let me just throw some things out at you and just rant a little. You know how we say, and by the way, this is a correct argument, we say all the time, at least me, and I'm assuming many other people do, most of these cities that you see that a lot of the protests and riots that come up and talk about how there's systemic racism in the police department, most of them have been ran by Democrats for decades. 50, 60 years, sometimes more. Most of them have Democratic governors, Democratic mayors, Democratic chief of police. Many of them happen to be black. Yet they're still accused of systemic racism. They still say that these parties are bad. And what do we say all the time? Gee, if you're a member of the black community and the Democratic Party tells you every 4 years, oh yeah, we're going to solve these issues, and then they don't. They just ignore you for 4 years until election time again. Maybe you should stop voting for them. How can I not make the same argument at this point for us voting Republican? Can anyone give me a reason to vote for Republican other than the Democrats are worse? Anyone? They basically supported the lockdowns over COVID. They're basically saying nothing as our country burns and police departments are being dismantled. Why should I vote Republican? I have a radio show. I talk to state level Republican leaders. I haven't talked to any national level ones yet. They sound good, the individuals I talk to. Where are they? We can't get one. We can't get one Republican leader. All of them are too cowardly to come out and say how horrible this organization, Black Lives Matter, is. I saw someone say this on a tweet the other day. They live in the UK. I see what you're saying, speaking up. You say it's similar in Canada. In the UK, someone said, we just saw Labour crushed. Corbyn crushed. Conservative majority put in with the Tories. And yet we've never seen the left with more political power in the UK than right now. They literally could go and destroy monuments of the UK while everyone else is under lockdown. And if you decide to try to protect those monuments because you care about your country's history, or you want to protest for, against this sort of rioting, this communist agenda, the police come after you. That's the UK. That's Canada. That's the United States. That's what's going on. Where is the leadership? Watch Tucker's monologue tonight. He says the same thing. I've been saying this for years, but never has it been more evident than right now. Notice all this crap came about basically after the primaries. If I had time to primary my Republican representative for Congress, I would do it right now. I'm going to do it in 2022, but I would do it right now. But I can't. It's over. So I get to choose between the Republican, who will win because it's a super Republican district, who will say nothing, or the Democrat that will endorse the overthrow of the United States. That's my choices. In many ways, I respect the Democrats more. At least they're out there saying what they want. They're doing something. They're standing in solidarity with each other. Where are the Republicans? Right, rational, wrong thing. The left has gutted and taken control of every major Western institution. It started with tertiary education about 50 years ago, and it spread from there like cancer. That's right. Again, I mentioned this the other day. Merriam-Webster, I've argued this since 2004 when I was in debate. People saying, you can't be racist unless you have institutional power. Therefore, black people can't be racist to white people. That was the argument, because they don't have institutional power. Every single institution in the West right now is dominated by Black Lives Matter. At least their philosophy. So if they have all the power and they start acting with racial prejudice, isn't that their definition of racism? How could a lowly white person be racist at this point? What institutional power is there? You can't even disagree with Black Lives Matter or you lose your job. Every major corporation in the Western world has messages on their homepages endorsing Black Lives Matter. Groups that were just rioting. Groups that are advocating the end of the police. Groups that are advocating the end of capitalism. Corporations supporting group that's saying that we should end capitalism. That's how powerful Black Lives Matter is right now. They are a political group that you cannot criticize. You can't criticize them. That's institutional power that the Republicans and Democrats have never achieved. That's where we're at. Not one, even at this point, I would take a Republican who doesn't even care about the constituents, like most of our elected officials, just for political self-benefit. How can there not be one Republican standing up? How can that be? Like a district like mine, Republicans going to win this district, period. Republicans are more likely, they win by larger margins in my district in Pennsylvania than Trump lost to Hillary in California. So my area is more conservative than California is liberal. There is no chance that the Republican will lose. So if a Republican here came out and said, look, I think that literally Black Lives Matter. I think that we need to do more for the inner city, but it is not true that our police departments are systemically racist. It is not true that this is a horrible country, and this focus on race is detrimental and it's dividing our country, and we should not embrace the political ideology of extremists that are suggesting things like abolish the police, or are suggesting things like reparations, or are suggesting things like communist agendas. We should be vehemently against those because they will not only harm all Americans, but will especially harm inner city Black Americans. That's it. I just gave a statement that any Republican could give that would be 500 times better than what they've said so far. Was that a racist statement? No. It shows that you are literally caring about the Black community. But they can't do it. They won't say it. If they would say that, they would win. And then if this blows over in 4-6 years, guess what? They'd be the only Republican that spoke up. Fast track for the Senate, or maybe even a position in the White House. But they won't do it. Because if you could say one thing about the Republican Party, at the top levels, the Republicans and Democrats are no different. But if you could say one thing about the Republican Party in general, it is that they are cowards. They're all mouth. They're not even mouth now. They won't even speak up. All of them right now, I guarantee this is exactly what they're thinking. They're sitting around with their team going, yeah, we're just going to ride this out. We're not going to say anything. The worst thing we could do right now is make ourselves a target. So we'll just be quiet. Whatever happens, happens. The numbers are looking good for us to be reelected, though. Heck, many of them are probably saying, fine, let the riots go. It'll only help my chances. I don't want to speak out. That's what we see. What can we do about it? It's too late in 2020. Who knows what'll happen? But I'll tell you this much. Every single one of you out there, run for office in 2022. Run for local office, run for state office, run for congressional office. Find people you know. I don't care if they're left-wing or right-wing. Find anyone you know that actually cares about this country and cares about the actual people of it, and get them to run. We should remove every single incumbent. Every single one. And I know what you're thinking, but wait, there's one or two good ones, or mine's good. Every time we say that, everyone says that. And then all the incumbents win. If I was in Congress right now, I swear to you, not only would I be speaking up every day as loud as I could against this insanity, but I would also be telling people, vote me and everyone else out of office. I think I'm doing a good job, but just to be safe, get rid of me with everyone. That's what I would be saying. Of course, the Democrats represent their constituents better than the Republicans do. I've been saying this on my channel. I could remember saying this. You remember when, this is how bad it is to be a Republican, right? You ready for this? You remember when Roger Stone got arrested in his underwear with 17 FBI agents with AR-15s pointed at his face? Well, the FBI tipped off CNN, who's now getting awards from the White House press correspondents, because they were tipped off by the FBI to sit there and film Roger Stone being arrested. And then a liberal judge, that's another thing, by the way, our legal system, we saw it with this Supreme Court decision today, 6-3. They don't care anymore. They're activists just the same. Even the conservative judges, most of them aren't conservative. So they took Roger Stone, and you had this liberal judge that was Amy Berman Jackson, who's totally ridiculous. And it's like, yeah, I'm going to give Roger Stone 7 years for this. Remember what happened after that? I remember, because I remember losing my mind over this. Bill Barr came strutting out, and he's like, hey, 7 years for Roger Stone? I don't think so. How about 2 years? And Republicans were like, yes! We win! Finally we win! We got him good this time! The conservative guy only gets 2 years in prison. Oh, what's that? McCabe committed the same crime and Bill Barr recommended 0 years? Never mind that! 2 years! For Roger Stone. Yes! What a thumb in the eye of the establishment! Finally a good day to be a Republican! That's how bad it is for us. When the DOJ, a Republican DOJ, looks at a left-leaning activist like McCabe that tried to engage in a coup to get rid of Trump and says, 0 years for you. And then turns around and looks at a Trump ally and says, but only 2 years for you. Republicans cheer like crazy, like they just won the Super Bowl. That's how far we've fallen. Oh, snap! Comey got fired! We did it now! Oh, man, I bet Comey feels terrible as he's making millions selling his book and touring all the mainstream media outlets and smearing Trump all the time. That'll teach you, Comey! Don't engage in a coup to overthrow this country! Wow, us Republicans, we're killing it! So, I'll do my part. I'll try to run. I'll do my part. I'll try to have a voice. I have 18 people on different platforms listening to me right now. I'm trying. I'm trying to get bigger. I have a radio show. I work 90 hours a week. I'm trying to do live streams. I'm trying to do regular videos. I'm doing the radio show. I still have a life. A good life, I don't reach that many people. I'm trying, but I don't. We don't have voices on the right that have a reach. We got a handful. Tucker Carlson, a couple others. That's it. Rasmussen poll on Tucker tonight showed 67% favorability for Black Lives Matter. Trump's at 43%. 6 months ago, the same Rasmussen poll said Black Lives Matter's popularity was about 30%. So after 4 weeks of rioting, threatening to get rid of police, threatening to kill white people, threatening to kill police officers, taking over parts of Seattle, etc., their popularity's gone up 37%. Why? Because no one's challenged them. There's your Republican leadership. They're back to telling you, hey, stay safe, don't go out, wear a mask, don't go to your job, second wave. I know Republicans that I've dealt with at the state level that were out marching with Black Lives Matter. That are now saying, well, hey, I went out for that protest. Why can't our counties open up now? Shut up! Just shut up! You failed! Go away! Hang your head in shame! Okay, I'll PA in my title? You mean my channel? I don't know if I could change it now, but yeah, Carvo, I agree. Trump should disavow BLM and show other political activists. Who do we have on the right? You got Tucker, you got me, which I'm reaching 18 people right now. Somewhat Greg Gutfeld. There's others. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to give a comprehensive list. But you know who the people are that are speaking out the best on this? I'll give you two groups of people. You ready? Number one, black people. Larry Elder, Thomas Sowell, Bob Woodson. Those people. Because they're not afraid to be called racist. And they're saying what they really feel would be best for the black community. So they can speak up. And you know who the other group is? Liberals. Did you hear me there? Let me repeat that. You know who's speaking up against Black Lives Matter and this cancel culture? You know who it is? Liberals. Not all of them. The vast majority of them clearly aren't. Joe Rogan, Dave Rubin, Sam Harris. I might play you some of Sam Harris's podcast here. Sam Harris, atheist, liberal. His podcast, 2 hours, 20 minutes of it's how Trump's the worst ever. Yet the other hour and 40 minutes is how ridiculous this lie is that Black Lives Matter is pushing, and how dangerous it is. And how the biggest danger to our country is this ideological conformity that says, you have to agree with us, we're going to base it only on emotion, and we won't look at data. A liberal. He stands more to lose. Say what you will about Sam Harris. If you're religious, you probably hate him because he's a big atheist. But let me say this about him. He stands more to lose. Because if he comes out with a seemingly anti-Black Lives Matter position, as someone whose majority of his followers are on the left, he stands to lose incredibly. As someone who's employed in academia, he stands to lose incredibly. Yet there he is, doing what no Republican will do. How about Vernon Jones, Democratic representative from Georgia, happens to be a black man, pushing forth a hate crime bill, saying that it should be a hate crime to beat people for political affiliation because he's tired of seeing Trump supporters beaten. Democrat from Georgia. Where are the Republicans? Why should I vote Republican? At this point, when the big issues, I'm more aligned with not leftists, but liberals. It's depressing. It really is. And it has a real effect on our real lives as well. Because there's no one with the nerve, with the spine, to speak up in a position of leadership on the right. What that means is all of us that consider ourselves on the right, not all of us, but many of us that consider ourselves on the right, we're afraid to speak up. I'm not, but it's cost me. And it may cost me my job eventually. And I have, a family that I'm trying to start. And I don't make a lot of money. And it's still going to probably cost me my job eventually. I don't know what I'll do. But I'm not going to cry about being a victim. I'll go on. I'll find whatever job's willing to hire me. Who knows? Maybe 20, 30 years from now we go with this. It'll be the scarlet letter. Maybe they'll put something on your license. Oh, this guy espoused conservative views, so we're going to mark your driver's license, and now anytime you try to get a job, you just can't. Sorry. The Supreme Court ruled in a 6-3 that if I go into my job and say, by the way, I'm a woman, and if you say that there are only two genders, then I'll sue you. I could say that, but they could fire me for saying, I think that this communist agenda and the rioting from Black Lives Matter is bad. I'd get fired for that. Oops. Yeah, we'll see, Rational. I don't see it happening. That's what's going on in this country. That's what's going on with the right. What's up, Don? Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. Oh, yeah, you can't say anything on social media. I mean, it's easy to talk a big game. If I lose my job, I lose my health. What am I going to do? Luckily, I have people connected to me. I mean, here's the truth. I don't have the survival skills necessary, but my loved ones do. And I guess if that's what it comes to, I'll just take any ridiculous low-paying job that I can, that I could get locally, where people at this point won't shun me for my political beliefs, and I guess that I'll work with that. And eventually, when I have to pay reparations, when I'm making minimum wage, I guess that's what I'll have to do. And when they come to disarm me, I guess that'll be my stand, I guess. That's the direction we're heading. Ted Cruz is good. You're right. There's some that are good. Rand Paul's been good on a lot of stuff. Jim Jordan's been pretty good. But it could be better, and it's few and far between. Remember, just take this issue out of it. Remember when Devin Nunes was getting evidence about how corrupt the whole Russia hoax was? He's been vindicated. Everything he said was true. Now we all know it. Never forget that the Republicans controlled the presidency, the Senate, and the House at that time. And you know what they did? They started an investigation into Devin Nunes. That's what the Republicans did. The Republicans still control the Senate. It's been like pulling teeth to get them to do anything, to even call to talk to witnesses. Lindsey Graham goes on Hannity every night. This time we're going to do it. We're going to get someone up here. We're going to get to the bottom of it. Nothing happens. Yeah, I hear you, Trevor, on Periscope, to become self-employed. But in our connected world, so what? You start a business, a bunch of people say, hey, this person's a conservative. They don't think Black Lives Matter. And then no one shops at your business. Yeah, Don, I hear you about Joe, by the way. It's terrible. I kind of talked about that earlier. By the way, if anyone donates lemons or super chats or anything, because of the way I'm looking at this, I'm on so many platforms, I just see the restream, so I don't see who donates. So if I missed you, just type, hey, I just donated, or someone type that, and I'll give you a call out and a thanks. But thank you to everyone that does donate. Did that happen with Jim Jordan, Michelle? I didn't know that. So, but that's where we're at. So, pretty troubling. Let me read something to you that I found on Twitter that I thought was very interesting. One second. Now, I can't independently verify this information, but it sounds reasonable, and I've had other people that agreed with this. So I want to read this to you. It's long. It's a long Twitter thread, and I'm going to read it before I comment. And I just want you to think, when I read this situation, it's about prisoner of war camps in the Korean War. What does this make you think of? Okay? It's kind of a long thread, but we'll get through it quick, I think. During the Korean War, captured American soldiers found themselves in prisoner of war camps run by Chinese communists. The Chinese treated captives quite differently than their allies, the North Koreans, who favored savagery and harsh punishment. The Red Chinese engaged in what they called lenient policy, which was a sophisticated psychological assault on their captives. After the war, American psychologists questioned the returning prisoners intensively because of the unsettling success of Chinese program. The Chinese were very effective in getting Americans to inform on one another, in contrast with the behavior of American POWs from World War II. For this reason, escape plans were quickly uncovered and escape attempts themselves were rarely successful. When an escape did occur, the Chinese usually recovered the man easily by offering a mere bag of rice to anyone who turned him in. In fact, nearly all American prisoners in the Chinese camps were said to have collaborated with the enemy in one form or another. How did the Chinese get compliance from American POWs? These men were trained to provide only name, rank, serial number. Short of torture, how could captors hope to get such men to give military information, turn in fellow prisoners, or publicly denounce their country? The Chinese answer was to start small and build. Prisoners were asked to make statements so mildly anti-American or pro-communist as to seem inconsequential. The United States is not perfect. In a communist country, unemployment is not a problem. Once they complied with these minor requests, the men were pushed to submit more substantive ones. A man who had agreed that the United States is not perfect might be asked to provide examples. He might then ask to make a list of problems with America and sign his name. Later, he might be asked to read his list in a discussion group with other prisoners. Quote, after all, what is it? It's what you really believe, isn't it? Still later, he might be asked to write an essay expanding on his list and discussing these problems in greater details. The Chinese might then use his name and his essay in an anti-American radio broadcast, beamed not only to the entire camp, but also other POW camps in North Korea as well as to American forces in South Korea. Suddenly, the man would find himself a, quote, collaborator. Aware that he had written the essay without any threats of coercion, a man would change his image of himself to be consistent with the deed and with the collaborator label, resulting in more extensive acts of collaboration. Let me read this part again, because this is the crux of what's being said here. Aware that he had written the essay without any threats or coercion, a man would change his image of himself to be consistent with the deed and with the new collaborator label, resulting in more extensive acts of collaboration. Keep thinking how this applies to today. Moving on. The majority collaborated by doing things which seemed trivial to them, but which the Chinese were able to turn to their own advantage. This was particularly effective in eliciting confessions, self-criticism, and information during interrogation. The majority of the men believed the Chinese story that the United States had used germ warfare, and many felt that their own forces had been the initial aggressors in starting the war. Similar inroads had been made in the political attitudes of the men. Many expressed antipathy. Why can I never pronounce the word? Antipathy toward the communist Chinese, but at the same time praised them for the fine job they'd done in China. Others stated that, quote, although communism won't work in America, I think it's a good thing for Asia. Our best evidence of another man's true feelings and beliefs is their behavior, not their words. What the Chinese knew is that a man uses his same evidence to know what he himself is like. He observes his behavior to understand his own beliefs, values, and attitudes. Writing was one type of confirming action that the Chinese urged incessantly upon the prisoners. It was never enough to listen quietly or even to agree verbally. They were always pushed to write it down as well. Psychologist Edward Schein describes this tactic. A further technique was to have a man write out the question, and then the pro-communist answer. If he refused to write it voluntarily, he was asked to copy it from notebooks, which must have seemed like a harmless enough concession. But oh, those harmless concessions. Seemingly trifling commitments can lead to extraordinary further behavior. A written declaration is physical evidence of your commitment, leaving no opportunity to forget or to deny what you have done. The irrevocably documented act drives you to make your self-image consistent. We tend to think that the statement reflects the true attitude of the person who made it, even if we know the person did not freely choose to make it. Unless there is strong evidence to the contrary, observers automatically assume that someone who makes a statement means it. Think of the double-barreled effect of the self-image of a prisoner who wrote a pro-Chinese or anti-American statement. Not only was it a lasting personal reminder of his action, it was also likely to persuade those around him that the statement reflected his beliefs. A similar technique involved political essay contests that were regularly held in the camp. The prizes for winning were invariably small, a few cigarettes or a little bit of fruit, but were sufficiently scarce that they generated interest from the men. Usually the winning essay took a pro-communist stand, but not always. Most prisoners would not want to enter a contest that required writing a communist tract. So the prize was sometimes given to essays that supported the USA but made small concessions to China. The men participated voluntarily in the contest because they saw that they could win with an essay favorable to their own country. But perhaps without realizing it, they began to shade their essays a bit towards communism in order to have a better chance of winning. The Chinese wanted as many Americans as possible to enter these contests so that, in the process, they might write things favorable to the communist view. If, however, the idea was to attract a large number of entrants, why were the prizes so small? They chose to employ the smaller rewards because they wanted the men to own what they had done. No excuses, no ways out were allowed. A prisoner who salted his political essay with a few anti-American comments could not be permitted to shrug it off as motivated by a big reward. It was not enough to wring comments out of their men. Those men had to made to take inner responsibility for their actions. We accept inner responsibility for a behavior when we think we have chosen to perform it in the absence of strong outside pressures. Here are the big things to understand. 1. When you see yourself doing something, you change your self-image to include, I am the person who does that thing. 2. When you think others see you in a certain way, you do the same. 3. You will act in ways that are consistent with your self-image. So in light of all that, please consider how being a user of social media, especially in real-name social media, is structurally identical to being a prisoner in a Chinese POW camp during the Korean War. When you endorse a cause on social media, the rewards are worthless. Tiny rewards means that you will not perceive your statements as being coerced. You will own them. And yet the public eye puts pressure on you to say things that are pro-social in a very particular way. Most people want to appear compassionate. A political slogan, a bleeding heart story, these things spread virally. They change your self-image. And they leave you with evidence, public evidence, that you are the kind of person who speaks out against, quote, systemic oppression. Social media created the feedback loop that drove everyone mad with social justice. Just like in the Chinese camp, the subtle but constant pressure to make cheap, moralistic statements resulted in mass conversions. I believe this is the true cause of the Great Awakening. That is spot on. You make these little concessions. The reward's not big. You're just on social media. Black Lives Matter. All your friends go, yay! Yay! Black Lives Matter. Starbucks says Black Lives Matter. Amazon says Black Lives Matter. Yeah, Black Lives Matter. The next thing you know, you're pushing to abolish police. Because you change your image to believe what you typed. And you know it's not just Black Lives Matter. There's more to it than that. So you have to make yourself more radical to go in with that message that you've been pressured ever so slightly. And eventually it crescendos to what we're seeing now. Rational made a good point. There's a rarity. No, just kidding. Thank you for the 99 cents. I really appreciate it. Let me play you some audio. Now, my connection's so bad that I'm going to play you this audio from my phone, hopefully into the microphone. I'm not sure exactly. I listened to the 2-hour Sam Harris podcast, and I wrote down times, but I didn't write down what he said. So these are just the highlights. So this is minute 45. You could YouTube. It's Sam Harris number 207. Can we pull back from the brink? From June 12th, 2020. You can find this on YouTube. Ready? I'm going to play the audio. Let me know if it comes through good.
Even 5 minutes to look at the data on crime and police violence? The answer really appears to be no, in every case, albeit with one important caveat. I'm not talking about how the police behaved in 1970 or even 1990, but in the last 25 years, violent crime has come down significantly in the U.S., and so has the police use of deadly force. And as you're about to see, the police use more deadly force against white people, both in terms of absolute numbers and in terms of their contribution to crime and violence in our society. But the public perception is, of course, completely different. I mean, in a city like Los Angeles, 2019 was a 30-year low for police shootings. Think about that. Do the people who were protesting in Los Angeles, peacefully and violently, and do the people who were ransacking and burning businesses by the hundreds, in many cases businesses that will not return to their neighborhoods, do the people who caused so much damage to the city that certain neighborhoods will take years and probably decades to recover? Do the celebrities who supported them and even bailed them out of jail, do any of these people know that 2019 was the 30-year low for police shootings in Los Angeles? Now, before I step further out over the abyss here, let me reiterate. Many of you are going to feel a visceral negative reaction to what I'm about to say. You're not going to like the way it sounds. You're especially not going to like the way it sounds coming from a white guy. This feeling of not liking, this feeling of outrage, this feeling of disgust, this feeling of, Sam, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why are you even touching this topic? This feeling isn't an argument. It isn't, or shouldn't be, the basis for your believing anything to be true or false about the world. Your capacity to be offended isn't something that I or anyone else needs to respect. Your capacity to be offended isn't something that you should respect. In fact, it's something that you should be on your guard for. Perhaps more than any other property of your mind, this feeling can mislead you. If you can't.
Yeah, this is Sam Harris podcast. Rational Wrong Thing put it up there. So it's his most recent YouTube video, I believe. But if not, if he put a new one up, it's number 207. So you can check it out right now. So that's the first thing he said, and he's absolutely right. He goes through the statistics. He shows that actually unarmed white people are more likely to be shot. The numbers that are being used are per capita. So black people are 3 times more likely to be shot by police than white people. But that's not the way you should look at it, because per capita means per 100,000 people. So per average of total people. So if they're only 13% of the black community, but they're 20% of blacks are only 13% of the country's population, but 20% of police shootings are black, that means that they're 3 times more likely to be shot than a white person per capita. But that's not the measure you should use. You should use per violent crime incident, per interaction with the police with violent crimes, because the police are going to use violence in situations where there are violent crimes. And using those numbers when we look at violent crimes, white people are shot far more than black people, from what you would expect based on the amount of violent crimes they commit. It's actually the opposite. It's the opposite of what Black Lives Matter says. Now, this is a left-wing academic saying this. Left-winger. Who's telling you this? Hates Trump, thinks Trump's horrible, says that there could be something to poverty in the black community being caused by systemic racism. And even he says these arguments are ridiculous, that these cops are out killing people, unarmed black men like this. Let's go to the next point I highlighted.
And he was presented with the cases. But there's no song about these people admonishing us to say their names. And the list of white names is longer. And I don't know any of them, right, other than Tony Timpa. I know the black names.
He's talking about white people that have been killed by the police. There's more of them. Why don't we know their names? He knows all the black names. Well, because, like I've said, this is because it's being selectively pushed by the media for them to cause division and control us.
In addition to the ones I just read from McWhorter's article, I know the names of Eric Garner and Michael Brown and Alton Sterling and Philando Castile. And now, of course, I know the name of George Floyd. And I'm aware of many of the details of these cases where black men and women have been killed by cops. I know the name of Breonna Taylor. I can't name a single white person killed by cops in circumstances like these, other than Timpa. And I just read McWhorter's article where he lists many of them. So this is also a distortion in the media, right? The media is not showing us videos of white people being killed by cops. Activists are not demanding that they do this, right? I'm sure white supremacists talk about this stuff a lot. Who knows? But in terms of the story we're telling ourselves in the mainstream, we're not actually talking about the data on lethal police violence. So back to the data. Again, cops kill around 1,000 people every year in the United States. About 25% are black. About 50% are white. Now, the data on police homicide are all over the place. The federal government does not have a single repository for data of this kind. But they've been pretty carefully tracked by outside sources, like the Washington Post, at least for the last 5 years or so. And this ratio between black and white appears stable over time. And again, many of these killings are justifiable, right? We're talking about career criminals who are usually armed and in many cases trying to kill the cops. Those aren't the cases we're worried about. We're worried about the unjustified homicides. Now, some people will think these numbers still represent an outrageous injustice. After all, African Americans are only 13% of the population. So at most, they should be 13% of the victims of police violence, not 25%. And any departure from the baseline population must be due to racism. Okay, well, That sounds plausible, but consider a few more facts. Blacks are 13% of the population, but they commit at least 50% of the murders and other violent crimes. Now, if you have 13% of the population responsible for 50% of the murders, and in some cities committing 2/3 of all violent crime, what percent of police attention should it attract? I honestly don't know, but I'm pretty sure it's not just 13%. And given that the overwhelming majority of their victims are black, I'm pretty sure that most black people wouldn't set the dial at 13% either. And here...
Do you understand what he's saying here? Right? The reason that the cops are involved in these violent altercations is because the amount of violence that's going on there. And if you're a black victim, because the majority of victims of black crime are other black people, you wouldn't want the police to only be investing 13% of their resources into communities where 50% of homicides are occurring. And so when you look at the data, and I don't know if I'll put this part in here on what I have, but when you look at it, it actually shows the best study on this was from Harvard, and then I think the Cato Institute also did it, or the Brookings Institute, or someone did a follow-up study that shows actually whites are 25% more likely to be shot by police per criminal interaction. But that goes against the narrative, so they're clearly not going to talk about that. All right. Now, again, the importance of this is Sam Harris, you might be saying, yeah, but Rob, this is stuff we've heard you say. Right. Sam says it in a different way than me. And he's a leftist. That's why I'm bringing this up. Why is it left that one of the only people with an audience saying this stuff is a left-wing academic who hates Trump? Only 2 more sections I have.
Here, that racism is the cause of that. And contrary to everyone's expectations, it seems that whites are more likely to get killed by cops. Actually, one factor seems to be that whites are 7 times more likely to commit what's called suicide by cop. And they're actually 3 times more likely to commit suicide generally. What's going on there? Who knows? There's a lot we don't understand about these data. But ask yourself, would society seem less racist to you if the disparity ran the other way? Is less physical contact, but a greater likelihood of getting shot and killed, a form of white privilege? Is a higher level of suicide by cop and suicide generally a form of white privilege? We have a problem here that read either way, you could tell a starkly racist narrative.
Now, here's the irony. He doesn't come right. He talks a lot about the problems of censorship and the problems of this narrative getting out of control by academics and things like that. But he doesn't outright call it racist, but that's as close as he comes to saying it. So what he's talking about is this Harvard study. It kind of found conflicting stuff. For those of you who don't know, you could look it up. It was a study done in 2016. It was led by a black man. This man was after the Michael Brown stuff and the Trayvon Martin, thought that he was going to research and find that unarmed black men were disproportionately killed by police. He said it was the greatest shock of his career that he found that the evidence suggested the exact opposite. That actually it was unarmed white men that were more likely to be shot by the police. However, his study did show that when it came to less lethal options of force, that black men were more likely. So it was around 20% for things like having a gun pulled on you. As a black man, 20% more likely. Being asked to get up against the wall and frisk, 20% more likely as a black man. But when it came to the lethal use of force, 25% more likely as a white man. So what Sam Harris is asking here is, let's inverse that. Let's say that white people were more likely to have a gun pulled on them by cops, were more likely to be frisked, etc. But black people were 25% more likely to be shot and killed by police. Would we then say, oh, well, that's racism against white people? Of course not. They would still say, well, the use of lethal force is the most important thing. And the fact that that's disproportionately towards black people shows that there's racism within the police. If it was a white person, they wouldn't have used the lethal force. They'd have used less lethal methods. Now switch it around, back to the way the facts really are. We use less lethal methods, more likely with blacks, with whites more likely to use the lethal. They still say that's racism against black people. And Sam Harris says, if you're a racist, a white supremacist, or that would also apply to a black supremacist. You could use the data to tell whatever story you want. That's exactly what we see happening. Now, this is the type of stuff that I've been saying on my channel. Everyone who's watched me for a while, I've been making these exact arguments for years. I had these debates back in 2015 with the Ferguson stuff. But no one has a spine in a position of leadership in the Republican Party. So it's left to me, who could reach 20 people, and Sam Harris, a left-wing academic. Almost done.
No. Unchecked racism, sexism, and homophobia? Is that really what ails science in the year 2020? I don't think so. Now, I'll tell you the fear of the other that does seem warranted everywhere right now. It's the other who has rendered him or herself incapable of dialogue. It's the other who will not listen to reason, who has no interest in facts, who can't join a conversation that converges on the truth because he knows in advance what the truth must be. We should fear the other who thinks that dogmatism and cognitive bias aren't something to be corrected for because they're the very foundations of his epistemology. We should fear the other who can't distinguish activism from journalism or politics from science, or worse, can make these distinctions but refuses to. And we're all capable of becoming this person, if only for minutes or hours at a time. And this is a bug in our operating system, not a feature. And we have to continually correct for it.
I'll play the end of it here. It's Sam Harris, left-wing academic.
One of the most shocking things that many of us learned when the COVID-19 pandemic was first landing on our shores and we were weighing the pros and cons of closing the schools was that for tens of millions of American kids, going to school represents the only guarantee of a decent meal on any given day. Now, I'm pretty confident that most of the kids we're talking about here aren't white. And whatever you think about the opportunities in this country, and whatever individual success stories you can call to mind, there's no question that some of us start out on third base or second base. Everyone has a lot to deal with, of course. Life is hard. But not everyone is a single mom or a single grandparent struggling to raise kids in the inner city, all the while trying to keep them from getting murdered. Right? The disparities in our society are absolutely heartbreaking and unacceptable. And we need a rational discussion about their actual causes and solutions. We have to pull back from the brink here. And all we have with which to do that is conversation. I mean, the only thing that makes conversation possible is an openness to evidence and arguments, a willingness to update one's view of the world when better reasons are given. And that is an ongoing process, not a place we ever finally arrive. Okay, well, perhaps that was more of an exhortation than...
That's what I've been talking about, right? We could talk about things like poverty. That's been my issue. I'm not racist. I have no animosity at all. I think it's a shame that neither party have done anything to help these inner cities. My way of dealing with it is to end the disastrous war and poverty policies, to focus on the nuclear family and two-parent households, to encourage a culture that thinks education is good, to encourage personal liberty and personal responsibility, to treat people in the black community and all communities like individuals and not monolithic skin colors, to stop focusing on race with specific policies. Will this solve everything in the black community immediately? No. But we'll be in a far better place 40 years from now than we have been after 40 years of these grievance policies of the war on poverty, where we went for 25% of black children being born out of wedlock to 75%. If we're going to focus on wealth disparity and poverty, then let's focus on it. Let's stop acting like race is the crucial factor in that. All it does is cause division. The establishment that hasn't been working for average Americans of all colors loves to create racial division, loves to create division based on gender, because then they know as long as people are fighting each other and blaming other people, they're not blaming the establishment. And so Starbucks and Amazon and Democrats and Republicans like Romney are more than happy to say, yes, Black Lives Matter, take a kneel for the American flag. They're more than happy to say that. Because while you're blaming that stuff, while you're blaming systemic racism, you're not focusing on the real problems. That these corrupt people in positions of leadership, they don't care about any of us. That's my problem. I can't make this clear enough. By the way, I don't know who it was on Twitch. I'm not on there right now. I mean, I'm on Restream. You could say what you want. You could disagree. I don't care. Please don't use racial epithets. Not a fan. I'm not a racist. My problems with Black Lives Matter is that it will make this country worse, and it will uniquely make the situation in the very communities they're talking about wanting to better. It'll make those worse. Again, the data's over. The science is over on this. I'm willing to look at new studies, but every study we've ever seen shows that when you decrease police, you increase the amount of violent crime. They called it the Ferguson effect in Baltimore. When what happens is when you lower the morale of police, they're unwilling to go into these communities, which then homicides spike. I'm going to try to get the study for you for hopefully tomorrow, but there's a study this guy did where they decided to look at every big incident from like 2015 to 2016 that required the media or the DOJ going in and saying that local police departments were somehow racist. And so there had to have federal oversight to come in and look. Each of those cases resulted in tens of thousands of violent crimes increasing in the community and thousands of homicides. In fact, the study concluded that with 4 cases, I believe it was like Eric Garner, Michael Brown, a couple others, with those 4 cases, the media reliance and the accusations of systemic racism in police departments directly led to, are you ready for this? 4,000 additional homicides. 4,000. How many unarmed blacks were killed by police last year? 15. But because of the Ferguson effect, where you started criticizing police, and even worse than the George Floyd situation is going to be this Atlanta situation, because that was a justified use of force, it looks like, from a police officer. Yet his mayor fired him, and now the DA suggesting that they may charge this officer with murder. So if you're a police officer and you make crap money and your job's incredibly dangerous and everyone in the country says you're a racist and your own mayor doesn't have your back, and if you're put in a situation where you're being beaten, then have a weapon taken off you, then have that weapon fired at you, you still can't respond with force, why would you even go into these communities? You won't. And then you know what happens? Crime runs rampant in those communities. And then the very community that all the do-gooders, we got to improve things in the black community, inner city black communities, they've literally led to the opposite result of what they wanted. But they don't care. They don't care about the data. That's what Sam Harris was saying. They'll be more than happy to pat themselves on the back and say they feel good. Rational says, sacrificing thousands of black lives is a sacrifice BLM leadership is willing to make. Yeah, so's Hollywood. So's all the politicians. So's Starbucks. So's Amazon. So's your friend that's on Facebook saying Black Lives Matter. It's a dogma. It's a religion at this point. You can't criticize it. Yeah, Santini. I saw that. My father-in-law is a trucker. I have 2 father-in-laws, stepfather-in-law and father-in-law. My stepfather-in-law is a trucker. I've talked to him about this. He knows truck drivers that are saying, we're not going to go into these cities without police. Good. Now, there's one more thing I want to say that Tucker hit on tonight as well, and it's something that I've been discussing in private. Let me start by saying this. I never understood why the people that hated Trump on the left were willing to give up their principles just because they hated a politician. I could never do that. It's a big weakness of mine, and hopefully yours too. That when you're a principled person, you're willing to listen to people on the other side, and you're willing to admit when your side's wrong. That's who I am. For example, I wouldn't cheer for Donald Trump to pay for a dossier from Russia and then use that dossier to spy on Joe Biden. I would not cheer for that. I would criticize that. Yet so many on the left were okay with that because it was directed towards Trump. I have talked about on this channel from day one about how I abhor political violence, and I still do. I will not endorse it. If your life is being directly threatened, you could use self-defense. Other than that, you do not get to riot. You do not get to threaten, intimidate, use violence to get your political way. That's not the way our system works. I'm against it. It's morally wrong. But it's getting pretty damn difficult to argue that it's not effective. Any of the rioters getting punished? Not really. They're getting exactly what they want. If I would have told you 2 months ago that there would be credible mainstream politicians that would be removing police departments in major cities across this country, you'd have said I was nuts. If I'd have told you that there would be mainstream politicians that were saying it's okay for city blocks to be taken over, declare their independence from the United States, and keep anyone they wanted out, just have a totally lawless society, you would have thought I was crazy. That's happening now because of 4 weeks of violence and threats from Black Lives Matter. Your elected leaders on the left endorse it most of the time. Your elected leaders on the right are afraid of it. What incentive do they have to stop? They're winning. The violence is working. I'm here because I understand that if we don't have dialogue, this is why I debate people. This is why I talk to people on the other side. Because I understand the importance of dialogue. And if we don't have dialogue, violence fills in that gap. That's what I try to do on my channel. I'm trying to inspire people to get upset, to vote these bums out, to make their voice heard, to peacefully protest. That's what I'm trying to do. It's arguably I'm not that successful. I don't have a big channel, but I'm trying. And I'm going to keep trying. I'm not going to quit. But at some point, the other side's going to learn, okay, well then I guess violence. Our law enforcement won't arrest people rioting and looting. De Blasio today, he locks up a playground for Jewish children, locks that up, because it'll spread COVID while he's endorsing hundreds of thousands of people on the street protesting about a cop killing someone in Minneapolis. At what point will the Jewish community in New York decide, you know what? Maybe we'll burn some buildings down. Then maybe we could go to our playground. Could you blame them if they're thinking then? Quit Little Man on Twitch. Not very little. That's the insanity that we're seeing. What are we, let's be very clear about this as well. This isn't a left-right issue. If this is a fundamental issue. If you're someone who is concerned with truth, if you're someone who's concerned with dialogue, you're losing. Not you as the individual, but your ideas are losing. Dogma is winning. Do I think we should ultimately allow these places to run their course with these violent outbursts and allow them to see how it turns out once they've burned everything down? Let me put it this way. If the Republicans are unwilling to speak up, other than Trump, I'm not going to vote for them. And I'm going to suggest I'm not going to suggest that everyone do this, but there's a credible argument for this. I used to say that if you're a Democrat and you're an old school Democrat that's concerned, for example, with the working class and, unions and things like that, Democrats used to be concerned with, you should hope that your party gets crushed in 2020. So much so that you get actual leadership in the Democratic Party that's concerned about the working class again. I'm almost willing to say the same thing of the Republican Party. Maybe what needs to happen is we let these places burn. The Republicans get crushed. We let them have 4 years of just... It's terrible because you'll literally be signing the death sentence of tens of thousands of people. Violence will rage all throughout the country. People will die. But maybe that's what it'll take before we could get someone with a spine that stands up to this. Maybe that's what needs to happen. So, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I think with this autonomous zone and things like that the thing to do, they're goading Trump. That's what they want. They want Trump to go ahead and send in some kind of response so that they could say he's an authoritarian. So, no, I think he should leave it run its course. And the sad part is we'll see this occur over and over again. We'll see that now, since the precedent's been set, that this is the type of stuff that you'll see happen in other communities. But yeah, that's basically, I think, I agree with you, what should happen. But, sorry. No. Nuking people, not a good idea. So, all right. Well, does anyone have anything specific to add? I really appreciate you all. Yeah, any donations that people could give, I'd really appreciate. Again, let me recap for those of you who didn't know. One of the people that helped me tremendously with my channel, American Joe, he decided to end his channel this evening. Go to his channel to see his exact reasons why. I don't want to speak for him. But in general, I started off the show just talking about how it's difficult to be a content provider. It's difficult in this day and age where our institutions are so dominated by an anti-American attitude that to even stand up and disagree with the political messaging of Black Lives Matter gets you ostracized. So it's really important to support independent content creators, whether it be me or someone else. I bought a new computer that'll be here in July that should take care of a lot of the lagging issues that should allow me to bring on guests without lag. And unfortunately, yeah, Joe is gone. Apparently he's done for good. But it's important to support independent content creators. I bought this computer, so I would appreciate, I'm trying to raise $1,200. Hopefully I could get there over a span of time. I don't need that tonight, obviously. But yeah, anyone who could donate to me financially, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you, Astro Zombie. And by the way, thank you to anyone on D Live that donated to me. Because I use Restream, I can't see what's going on with the donations except on YouTube. But oop, that's not right. 1 second, I'll get over there and I'll at least give out the lemons tonight. If you're on YouTube, if you consider following me on D Live, I'd really appreciate it. If I get 300 subscribers there, then I can put my short form videos on there. Yeah, I got some lemons tonight. Thank you, guys. Awesome. So let me... Oh, wait. I could add lemons to my chest here and give them out. So I'll do that now. So, yeah, and just to reiterate, if you can't donate to me, if you want to help in other ways, you could like and subscribe. Share my videos with some other people. Yeah, check out Rational Wrong Things channel. Yeah, thank you, Modus. But yeah, you could like and subscribe, share my videos on other platforms, and I would really appreciate that as well. So, let's see what we got. Let's see who the winners are. Oh, I don't mind. Go ahead and claim. Congratulations, Dawn, Phil, love the sax, and Slanty Chauffeur Pair. Thank you all so much for being here. So, just a reminder, I'll be doing this again tomorrow night at 10:30. I'll be starting. There is a brief caveat because I'll technically be at work, so there's always a chance something could come up and I can't do it, but generally I'll be good 99% of the time. So I'll let you know if something else comes. Thank you, Astro Zombie. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Ken. And remember, if you could consider at some point, if you can't donate to me, don't worry. I'll always be doing this. I'm not going to quit. I don't do it for money or anything like that. I just felt that was a piece of equipment I needed. Thank you, Santini. I really appreciate it. But I did need that new computer. And as I told everyone last night, my wife's pregnant with our first kid, and she's ready to kill me for spending $1,200. So I told her that I would more often than usual ask for money. So if you would like to see me not beaten to a pulp by my wife, please donate money eventually. If you're uncomfortable with donating on something like DLive, YouTube, or through Patreon or PayPal, send me an email at rob.nor@gmail.com, and I could give you my post office address, and you could send me something that way if you want. But yeah, whatever is most comfortable for people, I'm totally cool with. So, yeah, it's a sad night. I'm sad to see American Joe go, but listen, I think there's a lesson to be learned through everyone, which we can take away, which is your personal all this political stuff, your personal well-being and your relationships with your family are the most important thing. So, if you're in a position where Facebook's too much for you, or watching these videos, it's too much, it's too depressing or whatever, take a break. Your personal well-being and your family's the most important thing. So, you'd pay to see the beating. Don't tell her that. She'd be willing to come on and beat the snot out of me for money. I'm sure she would. I'm sure she would be willing to do that for free. So, all right. Well, thanks so much. I guess I got 4 minutes. I'll stick around till midnight. Hide me. Let's see. Any specific questions anyone has for the next 4 minutes? Pretty good showing for me tonight. 34 people watching right now, including one person on Twitch that's telling me that I need to exercise more, and he hates my voice. But that's okay. You're still watching me, so... Thank you, Big Sky Jimmer. Really appreciate it. You got a fish. JoJo's in the YouTube chat. There's my brother, by the way. Yeah, I haven't seen a Fisher in a while. That's funny. Yeah, so I'll try to do some more short form videos. I was just really busy at work this week, so I will be doing a live stream tomorrow night, though, unless something comes up. So I'm trying to... Originally, I was supposed to be doing a debate tomorrow, but I have not heard anything. What are the chances of civil war? Depends on what you mean by civil war. I think the chances are pretty low that we see large-scale, national, guns-in-the-street battles. I think you're more likely to see more localized conflicts. And sadly, the right does not have a chance in that civil war. At least at first. Because they will be painted as racist, and the right has lost the narrative, and the police and the military will believe that they are racist for fighting back. To the point where you could already see police forces cracking down on people trying to defend their property and encouraging looters. So I should have talked to you then, Phil. You got to refurbish. See, I had to get a laptop because I was going to get a PC, but the problem is I'm at work half the week. So like you see me doing this live stream now, this is me at work. So if I get a good PC at home, but I'm still doing all my live streams on this no, I won't say crappy, but this slower computer, it wouldn't work. So that's why I ended up going the direction of a laptop. I asked for a question. I did notice. You got one? Boxers or briefs? Believe it or not, boxer briefs. That's my preferred, my preferred method. We used to have this huge debate. We had a tally. We actually had a piece of paper we wrote down on if you're a guy, do you go through the gate or over the fence when you're urinating? Through the hole in the underwear, or do you pull down? It's closer than you would think. Oh, Ken made the one. Well, too late now. I already bought it. But yeah, next time I will talk to Ken. And if I should have asked. Yeah, it's a PC. It's a laptop. It's But yeah, it's a PC, Windows. So I'll show when I get it. I'll show all the specs and I'll show off. And there, I have people have generously donated a lot to me in the past, and that money does go into my channel. I got some new software that once I get the computer, I got Adobe Premiere and Photoshop, so I'll be able to do more thumbnails, editing, things like that, which I'm a novice at. Almost everything you see me do is off the cuff, and it's one take. So, it'll be nice to have some editing. All right, it's midnight. I'm running out of things to say. Not really, I could talk all night, but... yeah, new laptop, Kenneth, yes. I don't know if I have the specs. If you watch tomorrow night, I'll put the specs up for you, Kenneth. Or you could email me and let me know if it's an okay one. But it cost me, I think, $1,200. So that's what I'm trying to raise to pay off that computer so my wife doesn't kill me. That's the goal, anyways. So tomorrow, hopefully I'll have a guest or a debate lined up. I'll try my best. If not, it'll just be me. But you're going to smack me. Why, Kenneth? I shouldn't have got a laptop? You understand the reason I got a laptop is because I do a lot of videos at work and I can't travel with the PC. Or is it because I spent too much money? Is that why you're going to smack me? I'll wait for you to respond, Kenneth. Yeah, and I'll still be here. Don't worry. It's not a matter of making money or anything like that for me. I'll still be around. Let's see. All right, guys. Sorry, Kenneth. I didn't know what else to do. I'm using... Yeah, accidentally. Here's another thing I have. That little guy there I just showed you, my USB connector, you just tap it and it shuts down my mic and camera. It's a mess. So, yeah, that's cool, Rational. I'll get with you. I'll talk to you here shortly. So, all right, off to bed for me. Everybody stay safe out there. There we go. Stay safe out there. Thank you so much for listening to me. I'm humbled, everyone that listens. I'm committed to trying to be a voice for reason. I'm committed to talking to people on the left. I'm committed to showing that we need leadership. I'm going to run for office. Hopefully I'm going to win. And I'm going to try to change what I see as this country falling apart. So don't get too depressed out there. Know that there are people that think just like you. You are on the side of the righteous. You are on the side that encourages open dialogue. You're on the side that doesn't want censorship. You're on the side that we see this in history all the time, where authoritarians want to censor you, want to tell you that you can't think the thoughts you have. They're wrong. You will be proven right eventually. So stick with it. Don't get too depressed. So thank you so much, everyone. I'll talk to you all tomorrow at 10:30 tomorrow night here. Hopefully I'll have a guest to debate. And yeah, really good. Try to encourage some people to watch. I really appreciate it. So thanks so much. Have a good one.